Hello, I'm Raj Chengappa from India Today and your host for Nothing But the Truth. Every week, we will deal with key issues of concern and bring you perspectives and clarity as to why these matter to you and the one clear truth that emerges. The Central Hall of India's Parliament is steeped with history. It is a circular-shaped hall and it has large portraits of national icons, former prime ministers and president. It was here that Prime Minister Nehru made his famous Freedom at Midnight speech and Tryst with Destiny that he talked about on August 15th, 1947. On July 25th, 2022, India had another tryst with destiny when its long-suffering tribals, to paraphrase Nehru, awoke to a day of hope and prosperity. This was the day when Droupadi Murmu was sworn in as the 15th President of India, and the hall reverberated with clapping and sounds of Bharat Mata Ki Jai. Indeed, it was a proud day for Mother India, because for the first time, an Adivasi or a tribal was being made the President of India. Also, she was the second woman to be head of state, and she is the youngest to occupy the high office of the President. Prime Minister Modi described the event as a watershed moment for India. Droupadi Murmu herself, in her speech in the Central Hall, said that it is, and I'm paraphrasing, a sign of a great democracy when a poor tribal woman is able to occupy the high office of the president. Droupadi Murmu's story is indeed inspiring. Here is this shy Santal girl from the boondocks of Odisha, from a place called Rairangpur, who then works through a lot of struggles, a lot of hurdles, overcomes that, and comes to occupy the most prestigious real estate that India has, the Rashtrapati Bhavan. She did this through her indomitable spirit and through the dint of hard work. She is one among the 110 million tribals that India has. They live across 9 states, and the 2 largest tribals are the Bhils and the Gonds. There are 30 other tribals that have a population of more than 500,000 or more. And they are clustered in the heartland of India, though they are spread far and wide, right from Kanyakumari in the south to the Dangs in the west, to Kashmir up north, to Odisha in the east, where Droupadi Murmu comes from, and in the northeast, right up to Itanagar in Arunachal Pradesh. The tribals are close to 9% of India's population. And like the Dalits, who form almost double their population, the Dalits are around 15 to 16% in India, they also are entitled to reservations both in educational institutions as well as for government employment. However, unlike the Dalits, who were able to mobilize themselves into powerful political groups, the tribals by themselves have been isolated and disadvantaged. Statistics speak for themselves. 90% of India's tribals live in rural areas. They live in some of the most depraved conditions, and if you look at figures, you will see that their poverty levels is as much as 46% of the population as compared to the all India average of 26%. Their infant mortality rates, their child health parameters, the number of underweight babies that are born, the number of stunted growth that they have is much, much higher than the national average. The literacy rates of tribals are extremely low. That figure is at 59% as compared to the all India average of 74%. And one indication of that is that to this date, there is no tribal that has become a Supreme Court justice. Their economic status too is very poor. The tribals depend on jal, jungle and jameen, which is water, the forests and land. Unfortunately, over a period of time, they are the ones that have faced the most stress. Their land has been taken away for mining projects, for projects that have hydroelectric power, and for setting up factories. That has seen most of them end up as landless laborers and work as marginalized workers in various factories and cities. Because of their distressed status, their area has become fertile ground for Maoists and other insurgents to take root. And top experts say that if the colonial period saw major exploitation of tribals, in the garb of development, modern India has been as aggressive and as exploitative of the tribals as their colonial masters were. Droupadi Murmu and her life symbolize a lot of these problems that the tribals face. She grew up in a very poor family in Mayurbhanj, in the heart of Odisha, tribal Odisha. Her father was a marginal farmer who didn't have money to send her to school, but her father was very clear that she should be educated, and he was willing to sell his land to do so, and he finally did that. To reach school, Droupadi Murmu had to go barefoot and at many times cross a canal which was overflowing. But she always made it a point, her classmates remember, to be there and study hard. When in 7th standard, she had a choice whether to study at a school close by or go to Bhubaneswar. She decided to go to Bhubaneswar and stay in a hostel there. Her father gave her 10 rupees a month, which was clearly not enough. Her classmates recall that while they went to the canteen and enjoyed good food, Droupadi Murmu used to take the free meal that was available for tribals in that hostel. She probably watched only one movie during all that period. After she finishes her graduation in the late 1970s, Droupadi Murmu joins as a junior assistant in the irrigation department. She then marries Shamcharan Murmu, who's a bank officer, and they move to Bhubaneswar to live there. When her daughter, who's just 7 years old, dies, they move back to Rairangpur, which was originally where Shamcharan Murmu was. It is here that Droupadi Murmu takes on the avatar of a teacher. She joins a local school, does not take a salary from it, and teaches children over there. This is when she is noticed by the local BJP leader, who in 1997 suggests that she stands as a councillor. Droupadi Murmu wins the election and becomes the vice chairman of that council. Then there was no looking back for Murmu. In 2000, the BJP put her up as a candidate for the member of Legislative Assembly. She wins the election, becomes a minister in that time Naveen Patnaik's first government, and among the portfolio she holds is roads. One of the things that Murmu does as minister is to build a Pakka road to her village. She had never forgotten her roots. However, misfortune strikes Droupadi Murmu. Her 2 sons die in quick succession, and so does her husband. Grief-stricken, Murmu tells her friends that she became extremely depressed. She was not able to concentrate on anything till she joined a Brahma Kumari ashram that was close by and began meditating. That pulled her out of it, and she rejoined active life. She set up a school in the name of her sons and her husband, not only taught there, but ensured that there was social upliftment of tribals in that region. The BJP and RSS, who had been watching all her activities so far, had decided that she would be an ideal governor, and she was made governor of Jharkhand, where she performed her duties with grace, dignity, but a firmness. When her term ended in July 2021, no one had ever imagined that Droupadi Murmu would be the next President of India. As President of India, Droupadi Murmu's role is very well defined under the Constitution. She is a ceremonial head without any powers. She has to act under the advice and consent of the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. Though everything is done under her name, she appoints a Prime Minister, she appoints the Council of Ministers, she also is the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces. But these are notional powers. And yet, experts say that every president brings their own stamp to the office. APJ Abdul Kalam, the famous scientist, was called as the people's president because of the kind of access he gave the common man to the Rashtrapati Bhavan and the fact that he made it a point to go around constantly and speak in various events. Pranab Mukherjee was seen as an elder statesman. Ramnath Kovind, who had just exited as president, followed in Kalam's footsteps and opened the Raj Bhavan to the common person to come and see and demystify the presidency. Murmu, as a tribal, is expected to push the cause of tribals and showcase them, though many presidents don't like to be, and quite rightly, identified with their caste, community or religion because they believe that they are the first citizen of India. In fact, Ramnath Kovind never liked being called a Dalit president. He always believed he was the president of India, and quite rightly. Where the president of India plays a crucial role is when and if in a general election there is a hung parliament and there is no clear winner as to who should be or who should run the next government. Here, there is an element of discretion and each individual can make the choices he does as to how he should go about that. Though there is a legal process. Presidents have adopted their own style. In the 1989 general elections, there was a hung parliament. The ruling Congress, headed by Rajiv Gandhi, got only 197 seats. R. Venkatraman, who was the president then, decided that since the Congress was the single largest party, he would give the Congress the first chance to form the government. Rajiv Gandhi declined, and so he went to the next leader, that was VP Singh, who headed the Janata Dal. And he was asked by the president to prove his majority, which he did. Let's fast forward to 1998, when Atal Bihari Vajpayee and the BJP became the single largest party. And that time, the president was K.R. Narayanan, and his approach was that he would like to see the alliances that were there before he decided. And so Atal Bihari Vajpayee had to bring out or present letters to him from the various parties that supported him to prove that he had a majority, and then went to the House after the president agreed to prove his majority and become the Prime Minister. So while that has, each president can take a particular approach towards how he should deal with a hung parliament, there are other areas where the president can exert indirect pressure. Every time the parliament passes a bill, it has to get presidential assent or signature before it can become law. Now, the rule is that if the president is not happy with the particular bill, he could return it back to the parliament, and if the parliament decides that it wants the bill in the way it had voted, it will send it back to the president, and he has no option but to then sign that bill. That's where his discretion ends. So he can show his displeasure indirectly by just having the bill returned. But presidents have used other ways to do it, and that's a loophole that has happened in the sense that there is no time frame laid down for the president to sign the bill. When Zail Singh was president and Rajiv Gandhi was prime minister, in 1986, the Rajiv Gandhi government passed what Zail Singh thought was a draconian postal bill. So when it was sent to him for signing, he simply didn't sign at all, just kept postponing it. It's called the pocket veto, where he puts the bill in his pocket and forgets about it. And finally, the bill was rendered infructuous and was not passed during Rajiv Gandhi's tenure. Those who believe that Droupadi Murmu would be a docile, rubber-stamp president may come in for a surprise. She did show steel when she was a governor. And in 2017, when the then Chief Minister of Jharkhand pushed a bill through which she thought would endanger tribals, she refused to sign and asked him to reconsider. In her logic, the bill essentially said that the tribals could sell their land for commercial use. And she felt that this would not only be exploitative, but the tribals would be disconnected from their roots. And when she put her foot down, the chief minister had to relent and he withdrew that bill. Now let's deal with the political aspect of her appointment. While it is extremely laudable, and many people consider it a masterstroke, that Mr. Modi had chosen Droupadi Murmu for the post, there was also cool and cold political calculations that went into it. The BJP and the RSS had always wanted to have a more inclusive approach towards tribals, and what better way to have one of their representatives become the head of state. The BJP, whenever it has headed the central government, has used the appointment of a president to not only send a symbolic message, but also for political and electoral reasons. When Vajpayee was the Prime Minister, he headed a coalition government, and he decided to choose Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, not only because he was an eminent scientist, but also because he was a Muslim. And it would help secure the votes needed from both his allies as well as the opposition, as what did finally happen. If Vajpayee had chosen a Muslim to be president, when Narendra Modi became Prime Minister in 2014, he chose Ramnath Kovind, who belongs to the Dalit community and represents a very powerful political constituency that the BJP was wooing at that time. It is not as if the BJP only did this. In fact, they have taken a leaf from the Congress book. If you see, Indira Gandhi, when she was Prime Minister, appointed Zail Singh, a Sikh, and before that, Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed and Zakir Hussain, two Muslims. Experts see the appointment of Droupadi Murmu, that was pushed through by the BJP, as its long-term game plan along with the RSS to woo the tribals. In fact, the RSS has a history of working with tribals even before independence, especially to somewhat deflect the influence that Christian missionaries had over them. But when it came to elections, the tribals always seemed to vote for the Congress. That has changed recently. Only recently, the combined efforts of the BJP and the RSS have begun to pay rich dividends for them. In the 2014 elections, they won 26 of the 47 constituencies that were reserved for scheduled tribes. And in 2019, they upped that to 31 of the total seats available. And their influence was obvious in the other 55 constituencies where tribals play a major role in terms of the vote outcome. And they won as many as 36 seats of the 55 available, clocking 46% of the vote share. But the BJP's fortunes with the tribals seems to wax and wane. In 2018, in two of the largest tribal states, Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh, where assembly elections were held, they lost both of them, though they were ruling for a while in those states. Then in 2019, they lost Jharkhand, which they were ruling earlier. The BJP, however, remains relentless and innovative in its pursuit of the tribal vote. It has upped the tribal budget by almost 4 times. When it came to power, the tribal budget was around rupees 21,000 crores. Today, it is rupees 86,000 crores. The BJP has concentrated in providing pakka roads, pakka houses, and piped water for the tribals. In addition, they have used the cultural approach of lauding their freedom fighters. One of them is the well-known freedom fighter, Bhagwan Birsa Munda. And they are now celebrating Munda's birth anniversary as the Janjatiya Gaurav Divas on November 15th. Moreover, they're building close to 10 museums across the country to laud and remember the freedom fighters that came from tribal communities. While all these measures are laudable, experts say that the cultural outreach can only go that far. What the tribals really need, and that's what the BJP government needs to focus on, is beyond symbolism. They have to bring real socio-economic change to the tribals. And that does not mean development in the conventional sense. They have to walk that fine line of providing development and yet retaining the identity and the culture of the tribals and ensuring that they are not subsumed in the mainstream. In that endeavor, they should follow the fine example that Droupadi Murmu has set, an inspirational narrative for all of us. We wish her all the best, and thank you for listening to this episode of Nothing But the Truth. Look forward to having you with me next time.